asked me to open the show. But then a few minutes later, it kind of hit me that I really shouldn't be the person opening the show. It should be Margot Dolan, who wanted to be here very much, was planning to be here, and I know would have been thrilled to be here tonight. So I wanted to start with that. I want to also acknowledge this building. I think this show, because Barbara is so important, I think, in the world of contemporary art, this show is another level up for us. And this kind of puts us in an international bracket with this museum, which is really special. We've had wonderful shows here already, but this does seem to be like a highlight. I also want to say that this building would not be here if it weren't for that woman up there. During the time that we were raising the money for this building, Margaret was contending with Peter's health issues and really couldn't. So Luna took it by the horn, and that was the dream of Peter and Margot all these years, was to have a museum for the archive. And so I think this show just culminates so many important things that has to do with the vision of Peter and Margot in this place, the Ballinglen. Thank you, Barbara Rae. You know, we've been kind of, I was saying earlier, kind of ships in the night all these years. We started, we were at the Ballinglen almost within a couple of years of each other. And we'd always hear her coming back, oh, Barbara Rae, well, she's such a wonder, you've got to meet Barbara Rae. But she always comes in the winter. And Brenda, my wife, and I have come here usually during the summer months, but a couple of times we've stayed through the fall and into December when the nights start getting longer than the days. So today is midsummer. This is the longest day. And so, happy St. Midsummer. And so, I think the best words that I found were what was on the website regarding this show. And I think it says it beautifully. Working in varying climatic conditions, most often in the winter months, when the sun casts long shadows and reveals hidden features, Rae captures the shifting character of the terrain in a way that the summer light conceals. Ancient settlements and field patterns emerge in the low winter sun, leaving quiet stories that recall the memory of the land. Rae is particularly interested in the layered history of how the landscape has been used over the centuries, how it holds traces of those who came before. And that's something that I feel deeply, and I think most artists do. The exhibition features original paintings and prints which explore these layers, inspired by Rae's countless journeys through County Mayo, uncovering its depths. Rae records time passing. She is much less concerned with topography than with the histories of place and its people. Abstract expressionist themes are given maximum intensity. Ancient Celtic standing stones bracing ominous dark skies, abandoned famine-era houses in the west of Ireland, remnants of nets and lobster reels strewn along the shore. Rae distills the presence of mankind, artifacts weathered by time and fortune. So I think that says it all. And so anyway, congratulations.
Thank you, Randall.
But the other thing I'd like to say is, every year I come back, I'm faced with the fact that we're losing so many people. You know, Brian Pope across the street, who was a good friend of ours, we've had so much in common with this place, and it ultimately does get back to the people, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think that actually says it all. You know, when I arrived here for the first time 23 years ago, I came down Main Street and I thought, what on earth is this place? And then I saw Folks shop on the left. And I went in and I said, do you know where this Ballinglen Art Centre is? he said, "You're very welcome." And from then on, Brian and I were such good friends. And he was so generous with his time, as was Sheila. And while I was in that shop and waiting for Brian to serve people, I sort of cycled up to this door that had a glass panel, and it was slightly open. And I sort of looked at it and said, there's a lot of paintings in there. So I opened it a little bit more and opened out to this magical bar, which was essentially the gang hut for the Ballinglen scholars. And we would gather over there of an evening after work. And that made such a difference, you know. It became a community, and as Randall said, people have changed over the times. Some of my best pals, when I used to go to talks, were a lot of the farmers. Well, when I started out, I couldn't understand a word they were saying. It took me about 5 years to understand them. And we shared my limited knowledge of farming and cows and sheep and that kind of thing. And we got on really well. One of my best friends was Tony Lang. And, you know, there were others that have sadly now passed. That generation has passed. But being in Ballinglen for me has been so important to my work. I can't tell you how important. So when I'm here, I'm immersed in this amazing landscape and history and geology. And every time I come, it uncovers something new. I spend a lot of time out staring at the Cajun cliffs. And it was only just about 6 or 7 years ago I thought, hold on a minute, they're not just cliffs, it's a bird sanctuary. And I saw all these birds flying around, so I started including the birds. And it's all that multi-layered thing. You think you know somewhere, but you don't really. So I return like a homing pigeon to the same places. And every year I come, I'm going to Caja, I'm going to Ballinglen, I'm going to Blacksod, and just seeing the changes that have happened over the 23 years. You know, the low points when there was the crash and all building work stopped and everybody was very depressed, and now the resurgence and the presence of the West Coast 500, is that it?
Yeah.
The West Coast 500. And all the people that have been attracted to the area, which has its ups and its downs for me. Because if I find, and this is even in the winter, if I find a great place to park and start to draw, somebody is going to come along and park right next to me and say, "Can I see what you're doing?" No. So I was a bit overwhelmed by going out to Downpatrick today to see, you know, all these crowds of people. And what was one of my favourite places, besieged and with a big car park and a hot dog stand. You know, that's for me, you know, changes, everything changes, I understand that. But one of the times I went out to Downpatrick, I started drawing this fence. And you probably can see that I'm a bit obsessed by fences. And there was this fence at Downpatrick, and it was crazy angles of wood posts and a ripple of barbed wire and rusty metal square things that they put up. And over 23 years, I've been looking at that fence, and now it's a little stump and the sort of pile of barbed wire. But I found other fences, as you can see. The fences out at Downpatrick, not Downpatrick, Cajun. I've worked on quite a lot, and what I'm interested in with these fences is the fact that the fence or a gate is a barrier, keep out, or it's an entrance to somewhere, and it's protection of somebody's land, and they don't want you to go there. And then I'm fascinated by the construction of the fence, and I spent a lot of time One of the farmers up at Pager came along and he built a new fence. I was devastated. So I called it the new fence, and I did quite a lot of paintings to do with that. But also I go a lot down to Blacksod, and I was just saying earlier that I love Blacksod because it was just a raw kind of here, where fishermen and so on came in. And it was bleak, nobody went there. You know, there was odd person who would come down to the lighthouse and then go away. And what I loved, or not loved, was all the debris that was around, you know, over the pier wall. Lobster keels, bits of iron, old bedsteads, blah, blah, blah. So I went down in February and they tidied it up. I could not believe it. This is my favourite place with all these horrible objects and rubbish. And obviously it's to do with the fact that the West Coast gets all this rubbish thrown up. And so they tidied it up, but they'd left one creel, which was like a tourist attraction. You know, here's our authentic West of Ireland. We'll just keep it like this. And so I'm interested in how the whole West of Ireland, as with other places, have developed over the last number of years with a consciousness about the ecological effects of rubbish and plastics and these things on the beach. But people have woken up and they're really good about clearing up now, you know, in all the beaches on the west. Innish Keys, I finally managed to get out to the Innish Keys 2 years ago with Norman Ackroyd, my great friend, now passed away, great etcher. And what I was surprised about on the Innish Keys, very beautiful turf like a golf course, but on the west coast of the Innish Keys, it's all rubbish, it's all plastic rubbish. And so that was shocking because there's nobody there to clear it up. In Belmullet on the west coast, if you go down to the beaches, people are picking up plastics and putting them to one side and clearing the beaches. And that's absolutely wonderful. But I can't tell you how much it's meant to me to be here and to be involved over these years with the vision of Peter and Margot. That has just been magic. And I have to tell you about my first meeting with Peter. this is quite short. So I was in Studio 2. And so knowing that I use a lot of water, right, I do use a lot of water. And so what I did was I taped up the joins in the floor. You know, there was joints in the wood. So I taped them up with brown tape. And I thought, that'll fix it. There'll nothing go down to the library and flood all the books. And so Peter came to be introduced to me. And sort of the door flew open and he was trapped behind the door for a minute. And he emerged and he looked and he said, "Did we do that?" And I said, "No, Peter, I did it." "Why did you do it?" "Because I used watercolour." "It's what kind of watercolour?" "I use a lot of watercolour. I use a lot of water." So I thought I'd do that. Said, "It'll never go down into the library, never. It's concrete, it'll never go down." And then what happened? So a few years later, I'm working in the other studio, Studio 1, and I'm using quite a lot of water, and it's all blue for the pink. And somehow the blue water found its way to the skirting boards.
Oh.
And then it went down into...
You could see the little drop.
Yes, and it went down on the paneling, these blue drips, narrowly missing, and the narrow painting. And so blacklisted from there.
No, you weren't. We all cleaned it up.
They managed to clean it up. Yes. So I don't use quite as much water now, but somehow. But all praise has to go to the staff here, and particularly to Una, for putting together this amazing space. And she did it during COVID. I don't know how she did it. She did it. This is a world-class gallery. And now she's got another task across the road, and it'll be done in the same amazing way.
With Randall and everybody else helping, yeah.
You've got a new career.
I think retirement should be.
So, thank you to everybody at Ballinglen for allowing me to put on this exhibition.
Kate and Phil and Norman.
Yeah,
and everybody. People.
And, you know, this is the first time actually I've seen this group of paintings together. So it's such a revelation. And they could be in some little gallery somewhere, but they wouldn't look like this.
Kevin Healy too for hanging.
I'm Kevin.
Kevin, yes.
Yeah.
Where's Kevin? Where's Kevin?
He doesn't come to the openings. He doesn't like the phrase, but we always give it to him.
You know, the wonderful Kevin. You know, it all worked out really well. And I have to give full praise to my assistant. This exhibition would not have happened without Imogen and Una's cooperation and what she's done. She's just curated and edited the new book published by the Royal Family, so that's out now. So thank you to everybody at Ballinglen.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to meet